Mr. Speaker, pursuant to statute, I present the annual reports of the Department of Prime Minister and National Executive Council for years 2019, 2020, and 2021. Mr. Speaker, and I ask leave of Parliament to make a statement in connection with the reports.
Is the leave granted? Leave granted. Make your speech, Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I stand before this Honorable House to present the annual reports for 2019, 2020, and 2021 for the Department of Prime Minister and NEC. This report is a statutory requirement under Section 22 of the PM and NEC Act 2002, Section 32, Subsection 1, Part A of the Public Service Management Act 1995 and Section 5, Subsection 2C of the Public Finance Management Act 1995. These annual performance reports collectively gives accounts of achievements that helps us to measure our performance in terms of our mandate as a coordinating and monitoring agency of the important sectoral policies and decisions we have made thus far. This is pursuant to our key government fundamental philosophy or policy to make or to realize our Take Back PNG policy of this government and our intention to make Papua New Guinea become economically independent, and more so giving our focus on our rural economy. This should round up to some achievements we as government have done in the last 3 years. Mr. Speaker, as our country's 8th Prime Minister of our country, of our nation, of our 1,000 tribes, and on reflection, I must admit that the past 3 years has never been easy. It is or was never smooth sailing, given the increasing political and legislative challenges, as well as the adverse impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Despite these challenges and the challenging circumstances that prevailed, that weighed heavily on our economy, we are overcoming. We have overcome and we are able to make notable, substantial progress in some specific areas, especially those areas we set out to do for our nation. Mr. Speaker, my department's coordination role in the past 3 years through the whole of government approach has yielded some positive results. Below are some of the highlights. In the economic sector, we have, for instance, funded consistently since our pronouncement the 200 million Kina SME program in partnership with our 2 partner banks at the moment, BSP and NDB. And there is an increasing volume of lending, especially at BSP, by Papua New Guinean entrepreneurs and micro, small, medium enterprises. They're borrowing, low-cost borrowing, low-interest rate borrowings with longer repayment periods, and this is having an effect on our economy when Papua New Guineans out there in doing business. We have commenced our review on the Foreign Investment Regulation Amendment Act. We have enacted the Oil and Gas Amendment Act 2020. We have enacted the Mining Amendment Act 2020. We have enacted the Mineral Resource Development Company Limited Amendments Act 2020. We have approved the environmental permit for Wafi Golpu project. We have granted special mining lease to Kumul Minerals Holding, the special mining lease 11. At the back of this, we have negotiated a new POGRA benefit setting with Barrick. 51% of the total equity pie comes to Papua New Guinea parties, including 15% at no cost, free carried to our landowners and provincial government. We have imposed ban on export of round logs to be effected in 2025. We have completed a review of the Forestry Act 1991 We finalized the enhanced national determined contributions for Papua New Guinea to ensure Papua New Guinea is responsive in our efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We have established the Kumul Kumul Agriculture Holdings Limited as our state vehicle for agricultural businesses. We have established the freight subsidy for local agricultural products. Today you ask agricultural farming families and businesses in Anganofi, in Goroka and up in the highlands, they're able to access Port Moresby market with support in our freight subsidy to shipping companies that operate that route. We've enacted the Central Bank Amendment Act 2020. We've enacted the Income Tax Papua LNG Project Levy or Production Levy Amendment Act 2020. We've enacted the Income Tax Papua LNG Amendment Act 2020. We've achieved Papua New Guinea benefits in Piniang, for instance, negotiated at 63% as we speak, and we've allowed Papua LNG to progress beyond just signing, and we have given full support in some of the laws that were outstanding to be passed for Papua LNG. And of course, we've launched the Fisheries Strategic Plan 2020 to 2030. Some of the headline achievements, the enabling laws that we've passed and given support to, and indication of what we've done in the economic sector. Mr. Speaker, Deputy Speaker, some of the key achievements in the infrastructure sector as follows. Completion of Phase 1 of Connect Papua New Guinea 2020 to 2040. The Connect Papua New Guinea was launched and we are starting the Phase 1. And let me indicate to you, Mr. Speaker, as we speak, there are roads being run all over the country. The last 3 weekends, I was out on the road in country Papua New Guinea. For instance, 3 Fridays ago, I was able to connect the last 5 meters of the missing link between in the middle of Semberiki and the first drive. I was privileged to have driven myself from Semberiki into Kikori. That was following on the previous weekend where I was privileged to witness 53 kilometers of the Maramuni Road, pans from the Lagam site into Maramuni unconnected ever before. They're now connected by road, and over 300 trucks were able to travel into Maramuni to celebrate that occasion. Last Friday at Easter, I was at the opening of Handra Bridge in the Yanguru South District. These are examples of many, many programs that are running all over our country in respect to connecting Papua New Guinea. You got road now over Hiddenberg Wall, facing Telefomin for the first time. You have roads now being punched from Ley into Finsafen, going up to Kabum, facing Tawai Siasi. That's the direction of road running. And of course, some of the major Connect PNG programs, contracts that has already been issued. So the Phase 1 of Connect PNG has started, and it's being run as we speak, shifting focus away from just 1 or 2 hotspots and more into linking rural Papua New Guinea, where 90% of our people still exist as we speak. We are upgrading key power grids on the National Electrification Rollout Program. The endorsement of special pricing principles for the Coral Sea cables. We've endorsed the Energy Industry Amendment Bill 2020, and it's now operating. And we have now the National Energy Authority operating. We've endorsed the Civil Aviation Regulation 2020 law. We've endorsed and already implemented or passed the Road Fund and Management Bill or Act today that quarantines 5.6% of allocation of budgets going forward to just road sector in our country, so that into the future all roads are given adequate funding. The endorsement of the small craft and establishment of provincial boards and registries were established. The endorsement of the National Shipping Service Program was established. We developed the key projects under National Waterways and Safety Project. We upgraded 85 of rural airstrip under the Rural Airstrip Rehabilitation Program. We launched the Tokua Airport Development Project. We launched the Najab Airport Redevelopment Project. We implemented phase 1 of the Highlands Highway, Sustainable Highlands Highway Improvement Program. We concluded the 2.5 billion infrastructure financing agreement with the Government of Australia. We concluded the Master Development Agreement with the Fortescue Future Industries for energy, or green energy development rather. We've launched the 30-year Port Infrastructure Program, 2020 to 2050, for all ports in our country. We completed the phase 2 of the State-Owned Enterprises Review Program, as some of the things that we have done. Mr. Speaker, in the international relations space, my government continues to proactively engage with our bilateral and multilateral partners, and many of them have responded positively with technical development and financial assistance to help us not only mitigate through this adverse impact time of COVID-19, but also in our endeavors to grow our rural economy. I must place on record that in my engagement with international partners in the past 3 years, I continue to encourage investors to venture into downstream processing of our natural resources such as timber, cocoa, copra, fisheries, oil and gas, and in doing so, we add value to them before exporting to overseas markets. And all the bilateral nations that I've visited, Australia, New Zealand, China, Indonesia, Philippines, have given indication that this is to be supported by not just at the bilateral level, but also investors they have in their respective countries. Mr. Speaker, as a way forward, a number of MOUs have already been signed between us and our bilateral partners to set the basis of progressing this agenda of downstream processing. Aside from that, other bilateral partners, such as Australia in particular, have provided direct budgetary support for the first time in as many years. I just want to commend at this time our Treasurer for working very hard to ensure at the bilateral level the rapport is maintained, and we have since seen combination of aid as well as soft lendings, 0% with 5% interest, unlike lendings like credit suits at 8% for repayment at just 2 years. As just as a comparison. We've gone out there, borrowed very soft borrowings, clear of bad debts that we've inherited into our government books, and we are reconstructing for the future going forward. And so Australia has provided us direct budget support, both concession lending as well as grant. We've also borrowed, for instance, 280 million from the Japanese government, Mr. Speaker. They lended at 0.01% with a 5-year grace period, a minimum, simply minimum. But we don't back them dinner until after 5 years. Rate of borrowing at 0.01% interest. This plan borrow me black is him. You know, some borrowing law, former Prime Minister, na time start na mi plus tawantem boy. Credit suit stock, you beg and beg in 2 years that's all over $1 billion kina. This plan did not know that. Mi black go kisim wantem credible lenders and multilateral partners. We're only giving 5-year grace period. Canada from Australia, 0% interest. One time Japan, 0.01% interest. Back and back starting 5 years, repaying over 15 years of repayment. These are what we've done, Mr. Speaker, at the back of credibility restored for our nation, for our country, through open, transparent work that Treasurer has been doing with minimal disturbance from us at the Prime Minister's Department. And so, unlike in the past, Prime Minister's Department had every day was disturbing Treasury for functioning. Mr. Speaker. And so, aside from the other bilateral partners as Australia, as I did mention earlier, Japan supported very well. ADB supported very well. World Bank, IMF, etc. supported us very well. Mr. Speaker, below are some highlights in the international relationship. Going back to international relationship, we signed PNG Australia Comprehensive Strategic Economic Partnership. We had a statement of intent on trade and investment with Japan. We signed MOU, especially on downstream, more focus on fisheries with China. International Monetary Fund provided concessional financing, and again, for the first time, direct budget support with 0% interest that had a 5-year grace period all built into this. And it is, Mr. Speaker, it is not easy to get direct budget support unless credibility is maintained or credibility is restored. Our treasurer and our system have restored credibility to the way we are doing business here in Papua New Guinea. That's why you have people giving direct budget support. Mr. Speaker, in the governance sector, we've enacted the Whistleblowers Act, and I thank the former AG Minister is now sitting opposite to us in government, the Honorable David Stephen, who was instrumental in the Whistleblowers Act, again under our government's insistence. I thank also him and all body of leaders who were present when we passed the Organic Law on Independent Commission Against Corruption, much talked about for 30 years. But this generation of leaders, sitting with me and those also on the opposite side, we've delivered in our time in Parliament. ICAC is now enacted. We're now going through the process to recruit competent independent commissioners so that they could work in prosecuting corruption in our country. We've initiated a commission of inquiry on UBS, as well as port, 2 transactions we felt has the greatest cry by our people for a relook into those transactions. And Mr. Speaker, when I accepted the report from the UBS Commission of Inquiry, I made a fundamental statement. No executive government must be immune from scrutiny by the country if future demands scrutiny. And that includes some transactions, all transactions we are doing as executive government. Country deserves scrutiny, scrutiny must be made. And if no law was broken, those of us who made those decisions we don't need to worry about this one. So the inquiry report on UBS will be tabled in Parliament tomorrow. So it's tabled in Parliament tomorrow. We all will have a preview into what was transacted. In fact, it was a world-class report, a world-class inquiry that was able to gather in all evidences. And I will be having an associate statement in regards to the Commission of Inquiry into UBS, and for us to take cue from that report onwards and render prosecution where it needs to be rendered, and render restitution where it needs to be rendered in as far as trying to claim for loss of revenue that Papua New Guinea citizens face in the result of the UBS transaction. Of course, in terms of governance sector, we did complete Bougainville post-referendum. We completed a national anti-corruption strategy and work plan. Some of the key achievements in the law and justice sector, we enacted a Joint Forces College of Papua New Guinea Act 2020 for the first time, so we have a combined Joint Force colleges in terms of our law and order response. We established the Joint Forces College in Igam, Ley, Marape Province. We established police stations of excellence at Waigani, piloted. We establishing Defense Forward Operating Base and a new battalion up there in Hela Province to look after all the lawlessness in the region where all our key assets, including Pogra, gold, the LNG, the gas, the oil fields, and the border areas are concerned. And we did enact the Emergency Defense Force COVID-19 Act 2020. Some achievements in the health sector, Mr. Speaker. We established provincial health authorities and amendments to the Provincial Health Authorities Act 2020 and regulations. We established the National Pandemic Act 2020, which was passed in Parliament. We had the COVID-19 National Preparedness and Emergency Response Plan, the enactment of the Radiation Safety and Control Act 2020 and regulations, which has been absent for us in so long, and many were dying of cancer. We finally brought this up and we passed this law into, and it's now currently assisting in procurement of to support the cancer efforts and fighting cancer in our country. We improved the health infrastructure and major impact health projects, hospital and district hospitals, provincial hospitals and district hospitals rather, and the National Laboratory and Cancer Center and the Institute of Port Moresby General National Library and Cancer Center and Institute at Port Moresby General Hospital in Angau. These are being worked upon, Mr. Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I'm pleased to announce that the specialist referral hospitals both in Port Moresby and Angau are in very advanced states in the not too distant future. Papua New Guinea, Banana Guard, Philippines, Australia, heart operation or cancer, Port Moresby, Lay will become our cancer and specialist healthcare referral house explorer country by September this year. I think Port Moresby and Angau to Plantain by ready. You may also launch the National Health Plan 2021 to 2030. Key achievements in the education sector, we endorsed the higher education loan program, giving interest-free lending to our students who need help in our colleges and universities. We replaced the tuition fee free with government tuition fee subsidy scheme. We developed the Education Sector Development Plan 2023 to 2027. We launched the National Education Plan 21 to 2030. We enact the higher education reform key legislations in Parliament. We enacted higher education reform legislations. We launched the early childhood education policy in 2020, and we are rolling out FODE, or flexible open distance education, and TVET programs, especially for those who have left schools. We're trying to bring them back into second chance education through FODE and TVET. Some achievements in the community development sector. The Lookout and Picnic Act was passed. We're implementing the gender equality safety, the GESI program. We established the community development centers and rolling that out in few areas. The National Disability Act was passed. The first ever public inquiry to address gender-based violence in PNG was held by a special parliamentary committee on gender-based violence, and we presented Universal Periodic Country Report in Geneva. Key achievements in the administrative and provincial and district services. We enacted the Public Service Management Amendment Act 2020. We amended the District Development Authority Act 2020, the draft bill on the National Planning and Monitoring Responsibility Act 2021, cost of service study report endorsed by Cabinet in 2021, but a report on the review of the Electoral Boundaries Commission, which was passed. Bipartisan Parliamentary Special Committee on Public Sector Reform was established in 2019, and good work has been progressed. Parliament endorsed the review recommendations of the organic law on national and local level government elections. Parliament endorsed review recommendations of the organic law on provincial and local level government. The organic law on decentralization bill is being mooted, still on table, that is subject to further consultation. We looked at the service delivery partnership agreements signed in 2019 for Enga Province, New Ireland, and East New Britain Province. Comments review on the Intergovernment Financing Act. Mr. Speaker, some legislative reform studies to date. Our government has supported and successfully tabled the following bills and legislations in Parliament. In 2019, 30 bills and legislations were endorsed by NEC and passed in Parliament. These were the key ones: the Public Money Management Regularization Amendment Act 2019, Public Finance Management Amendment Act 2019, Papua New Guinea Fiscal Responsibility Amendment Act 2019, Employment of Non-Citizen Amendment Act 2019, Special Economic Zones Authority Act 2019, Octedi Environmental Management Act 2019, Oil and Gas Amendment Act 2019, Resource Contracts Fiscal Stabilization Papua LNG Amendment Act 2019, Price Regulation Papua LNG Project Amendment Act 2019, Conabada Petroleum Park Authority Papua LNG Project Amendment Act 2019, Insurance Papua LNG Project Amendment Act 2019, Income Tax, Dividend Withholding Tax and Interest Withholding Tax Rates Papua LNG Project Amendment Act 2019, Income Tax Papua LNG Project Amendment Act 2019, Radiation Safety and Country Act 2019, National Institute of Standards and Industrial Technology Amendment Act 2019, Forestry Amendment Act 2019, Conservation and Environmental Authority Amendment Act 2019. In 2020, 43 bills and legislations were also endorsed by my government and passed in Parliament, and these were major ones. the University of Papua New Guinea Amendment Act 2020, the University of Goroka Amendment Act 2020, Road Management and Fund Act 2020, Papua New Guinea University of Technology Amendment Act 2020, Papua New Guinea University of Natural Resource and Environment Amendment Act 2020, National Training Council Amendment Act 2020, Higher Education General Provisions Amendment Act 2020, Higher and Technical Education Reform Act 2020, Education Amendment Act 2020, Customs 2021 Budget and Amendment Act 2020, Stamp Duties Papua LNG Project Amendment Act 2020, Oil and Gas Papua LNG Production Levy Amendment Act 2020, Insurance Papua LNG Project Amendment Act 2020, Income Tax Papua LNG Project Teen Capitalization and Amendment Act 2020, Income Tax Papua LNG Project Production Levy and Amendment Act 2020, Income Tax Papua LNG Project and Amendment Act 2020, Superannuation General Provisions Amendment Act 2020, Public Service Management and Consequential Amendment Act 2020, Prime Minister National Executive Council Amendment Number 2 Act 2020, National Water Supply and Sanitation Amendment Act 2020, the Joint Forces College of Papua New Guinea Act 2020, the Fiscal Responsibility Amendment Act 2020, Central Banking Amendment Act 2020, Prime Minister and NEC Amendment Act 2020, Oil and Gas Amendment Act 2020, Mining Amendment Act 2020, Mineral Resource Development Company Limited Authorization Act 2020, National Pandemic Act 2020, United Church in Papua New Guinea Incorporation Act 2020, Whistleblowers Act 2020, Public Service Management Act 2020, Quarantine Amendment Act 2020, Public Health Amendment Act 2020, Emergency General Provisions COVID-19 Act 2020, Emergency Defense Force COVID-19 Act 2020. Mr. Speaker, there were 40 bills and legislation supported by my government and passed in Parliament in 2021, and this includes the following: Dangerous Drug Amendment Number 1 Act 2021, Oil and Gas Penang LNG Project Act 2021, Controlled Substance Act 2021, Climate Change Management Amendment Act 2021, National Capital District Commission Amendment Act 2021, Dangerous Drugs Amendment Act 2021, Connect PNG Implementation and Funding Arrangements Act 2021, Central Bank Amendment Act 2021, Public Finance Management Amendment Act 2021, District Development Authority Amendment Act 2021, National Procurement Amendment Act 2021, Kumul Consolidated Holdings Authorization Amendment Act 2021, Public Service Management Amendment Act 2021, Oil and Gas Papua LNG Project Amendment Act 2021, National Energy Authority Act 2021, Electricity Industry Amendment Act 2021. Mr. Speaker, as we conclude our term as members of Parliament in this 10th Parliament, and as I also conclude my term in this Parliament as Prime Minister, I would like to inform all members in this House that our government has laid a firm foundation to the future of our economic growth and prosperity for this country, and I hope that the next government will carry on the legacy that we are putting in place. Whilst development and physical infrastructure development may be seen as an evidence of progress, fundamentally, the laws and public policy that governs our operation are important. In these last 3 years, whilst we've been delivering work and delivering on our budget expectations, I think on record, the 10th Parliament, especially on this side, when we were in office in the last 3 years under tough times, the Prime Minister and NEC Department and all of you members of Parliament have given good support, and we have truly been utilizing our time as legislators, delivering some fundamental legislations to make it happen for our country going forward. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker.